once in a while, I get this thing from the Republicans wanting to know my views on a wide variety of subjects. Normally, I just blog about it, giving a long explanation for my answers and why, let's be honest, the Republicans will never pay any attention to what I have to say. So this year, I thought I'd take it to YouTube and VidMe just to see what my viewers think. So let's get into the 2017 Congressional District Census and see why the Republicans continue to fail. As usual, this comes in 4 parts: political profile, general issues, domestic issues, and national defense. The first section, political profile, is all about me, and I think this is where they let their computers edit out anyone who doesn't fit into their idea of what a Republican is. The first question is about how I generally identify, which, given the options, I think I'd say a moderate Republican. I've been a registered Republican since I turned 18, my parents have been lifelong Republicans, etc. It isn't that I really like the Republican Party, but they're better than the alternative. And unfortunately, that's not saying a lot. Next, do you have any interest in serving as a volunteer to help the Republican Party? Nope. No, I do not. And it's not just because I have no time, but most Republican candidates, at least in my area, are not all that hot to begin with. Now, I'd be happy to help someone I actually supported, but I can't remember the last candidate I actually supported. All I do is vote against the greater of the evils. So, no. Did you vote for Donald Trump in the 2016 presidential election? Yes. Well, more properly, I voted against Hillary Clinton. I didn't actually like Trump, I just liked Clinton less. But that's how I vote in every election these days. If I had to wait for someone I actually supported, I'd never vote again. What age category below applies to you? Well, I'm 50, so there you go. How close do you think that your views are to other voters in your community? Well, I haven't lived here all that long, so I really couldn't say, but if I had to guess, I'd say pretty well, considering how many Trump flags are still flying in my neighborhood. This is not a liberal area. From what media source do you regularly receive your political news? And they give a bunch of mainstream media sources and social media, etc. And there was a time not too long ago that I would have said talk radio because it's all I ever listened to in the car. But since I moved, I'm on the other side of a mountain from my favorite conservative talk radio station, and it's really hard to get a clear signal. I don't pay any attention to mainstream media at all because I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. And I find that most people lie, or at least uncritically buy into things that they agree with, because it agrees with their preconceived political notions. So while I get information from a lot of places, I don't actually believe any of it. I try to go and verify their claims independently. And of course, that's not what they want to hear. Moving on to the general issues section. Do you think that things in our country are going in the wrong direction, or do you think that things are going in the right direction? That's a really awkward way to phrase that. But really, they're going in the wrong direction just as much as they were under Obama. And that's because the GOP isn't actually conservative anymore. Donald Trump is not a conservative. Nobody running for president on the Republican side was a conservative. We need to get back to actual conservatism, which I don't see happening anytime soon. Please indicate the top 5 issues that you believe should be acted on immediately. Alright, here are my personal priorities. Secure our nation's borders, reform taxes, reduce the deficit, rebuild infrastructure, and cancel unconstitutional executive orders issued by both Obama and Trump. Trump is every bit as guilty as Obama was. Now, of course, I think there is another issue that will never be acted on by the GOP, and that's to stop catering to religious fundamentalists. Separate church and state. Get your religious horseshit out of your political positions. But that's not going to happen, is it? Do you currently trust the federal government bureaucracy to work for the best interest of the citizens of our nation? Not a chance in hell. And that goes for both the Democrats and the Republicans. I don't trust any of you. I wouldn't trust any other American party either. Politics is inherently corrupt in this country, and we just don't have anyone running from any party that actually wants to work for the American people. They just want power and money and influence. We need to work on that. Have you held the belief that most of your elected leaders are beholden to big money special interests? Yeah? But not just special interests, but political interests. And that includes you, Republican Party. And the Democrats too. These parties don't care about the people. They care about power. It's one reason we're so messed up. Neither side sees the big picture. They're just so ideologically deadlocked. They want what they want because they want it, not because it's actually valuable to the nation. Do you support a constitutional amendment to impose term limits on all members of Congress? You know, there was a point in time where I'd have said yes. But now, I just don't care, because it doesn't matter how many times you throw out the old crooks. Everyone waiting in the wings are new crooks. We need to get rid of all the crooks. But neither the Republicans nor the Democrats put up anyone but crooks. We don't need term limits. We need an entirely better class of politicians running for office. Do you believe the national media has a strong bias against all things Republican and fails to tell America's voters the real facts about Republican policies, principles, and goals? I think the national media has a strong bias toward making as much money as they can, screw the truth. And that goes every bit for Fox News as it does for MSNBC. They're all spinning a narrative. They're not reporting the news. Do you think political correctness has gotten out of hand in America? Well, absolutely, but we have a problem from both sides. The Republicans are every bit as guilty as the Democrats. The far left is just as bad as the far right. Both sides want special treatment for their favored groups. Both sides want to control bad press for their special friends. And that all needs to go away. Political parties need to work for the American people, not just for their end of the political spectrum. You're all terrible. Please indicate the top 5 issues that are most important to you. Didn't they already ask that? What's the point of doing it again? All right. From this list, I'm going with the economy/jobs, taxes, federal spending, education, and immigration. Things like race relations would just go away if the idiot regressives would just grow the hell up. Things like the federal deficit would go away if we'd stop spending like drunken sailors and live within our means. The whole country is a mess because neither party has any interest in actual conservative values. Next, we come to domestic issues. How confident are you that America's economy will improve in the next 12 months? Well, unless someone does something really stupid, it will. It almost always does. Historically, the stock market goes up over the long term. We just need to stop the government from being idiots, and we'll be fine. Which of the following is the single most important economic issue facing you and your family? Well, taxes. Get rid of high taxes, and the rest takes care of itself. Companies have more money to put into expansion and hiring. People who are employed in good jobs get more benefits and hence more health care. We don't get as much inflation if the idiots on the left stop pushing for artificial increases in wages. It's not really that hard. Do you agree that President Donald Trump and our Republican leaders in Congress should be aggressive in working to pass legislation to create jobs, cut taxes and regulations, end economic uncertainty, and make America more competitive? Yes, but that would require them to be actual conservatives, which they're not. They aren't fiscal conservatives. They don't want to live within our means. They don't want to stop borrowing money from China. They're every bit as liberal as the Democrats in that regard. It's just saying one thing and doing something else as usual. Do you think Republicans should push to reduce federal tax rates and replace the current tax code with a fairer, more equitable system? Well, absolutely. You just won't do it because you're in love with money and power. Let me know when the Republicans are willing to slash federal spending by 10% across the board. They won't do it. They'll pick a few departments to cut and throw more and more money at the military because they've got a military fetish. It just won't happen. Let me know when you announce that, effective immediately, we're not going to borrow 1 red cent from China. Go ahead. This is mindless nonsense that will never happen. It's appeared in every single one of these surveys for years, and it still hasn't gone through. Do you favor cutting the corporate tax rate, currently one of the highest in the world, in order to help bring more businesses back to the US where they can invest their dollars in creating more jobs? Sure, but that's not going to do it. Labor costs are much cheaper overseas, so unless you either tax the crap out of companies that go overseas or find a way to lower costs here, they've got no financial interest in coming back. Hey, impose a 100% import tax on all goods coming into the country, and then let them try to compete with goods made in the US. They'll come back because it would be financial suicide not to. But you won't do that, will you? Do you support Republican efforts to enact a market-based healthcare system and health savings accounts that would allow Americans to control their own medical care? The problems with healthcare in America will not be solved by any of that. Nobody wants to address the core problems. They all want to just plaster them with bandages and pretend they're doing something. So long as we have an absurdly litigious society where people will sue at the drop of a hat and doctors have to carry malpractice insurance costing them $100,000 a year or more, so long as we have that extra layer of bureaucracy called health insurance, so long as people expect the government to give them stuff for free because they bothered to wake up in the morning, our problems are never going to be solved. Do you support President Trump's efforts to secure our nation's borders and work aggressively to enforce long-standing immigration laws to solve our nation's illegal immigration problem? Yes. Do I think he'll actually accomplish anything? No, because I don't think we as a nation have the will to do anything. I don't think we care as a country, and so long as that's the case, we're doomed. Do you support canceling all federal funding to sanctuary cities that fail to enforce U.S. immigration laws? Damn straight. In fact, I support going into those cities and arresting their entire governing body and putting them in federal prison. Whether these people like it or not, when they're elected, they're beholden to follow the law. If they want to abrogate their responsibilities, I've got no problem putting them away for 20 years. Do you believe America should suspend immigration from terror-prone regions where vetting cannot safely occur? Yes, I do. Immigration is not for the benefit of other countries. It's for our benefit. I don't give a damn how much you want to live in America. You get to come if and only if we decide that you're going to be a benefit to us. That's how immigration works. If we have a significant reason to think that you might not be a good fit for America, or if you might be a danger to America, then screw you! You don't get to come. The Democrats' fixation on climate change has led to costly regulations that are negatively impacting our nation's economy. Do you think climate change is a major threat to our nation? Honestly, climate change is such a clusterfuck anymore. It's become politically driven, not scientifically driven. Is climate change a risk? Yes. But so long as the majority of the changes fall on us and other advanced nations, while small countries just get to pollute as much as they want, we're not going to get anywhere. But the political left doesn't want that, and a lot of them are just trying to make a buck off of climate change hysteria. Enough already! Are race relations in America getting better or worse? Well, worse, no question. And that's entirely the left's fault. But that's their primary way of getting votes, by pointing at others and calling them names. The regressive left has to grow the hell up. During Barack Obama's presidency, poverty levels in the United States have risen. Do you think a key element of the Republican agenda should be to restore opportunity and help to lift people out of poverty without expanding entitlement programs? Well, hell yes. One thing we need to tell the poor, and this is something the left doesn't want them to know, is that it's their job to better themselves. It's not the job of society to take care of them. It's their own job to be responsible, to work hard, and to dig themselves out of the hole that the Democrats have pushed them into over the years. But of course, that's something the poor don't want to hear. Do you support a hiring freeze on all federal employees, with the exceptions of the military, public safety, and public health, to reduce the federal workforce through attrition? No, I don't want there to be any exceptions. Currently, there are 1.4 million active military personnel out there. Maybe if we didn't have so many potential bodies to send into pointless overseas wars, we wouldn't end up in so many. President Trump has called for eliminating the U.S. Department of Education and transferring educational supervision from the federal government to local communities. Do you agree with such a proposal? Not a chance in hell. American education does not need less oversight. It needs more oversight. We need to have a national educational standard that every school, public, private, and home must follow, period. I don't want to see the religious refusing to teach evolution or the liberals refusing to teach controversial subjects. The purpose of education is to train our youth. We need to do that for everyone, everywhere, no exceptions. Do you support canceling all of Barack Obama's unconstitutional executive orders that created new regulations, fees, and other freedom-destroying measures? Sure, so long as we do the same thing to Trump's unconstitutional executive orders. Think they'll go for that one? Do you believe more federal laws that impede individual Second Amendment rights are the proper response to gun violence in our nation? No. But then again, I've got no problem with things like gun registration and holding people legally responsible for guns that are registered in their names. I've got nothing against private gun ownership so long as it's open and transparent and, most importantly, responsible. Why do the Republicans oppose that? Do you agree that in response to the Department of Veteran Affairs failing in its role to properly serve the healthcare needs of America's veterans, that they should be guaranteed the right to choose their own doctor and have full access to care outside the VA? Personally, I think the VA should be shut down. There's no reason veterans need special doctors and special hospitals and special clinics. Just give them regular health insurance and let them go do their own thing. Do you agree with President Trump that fixing our nation's inner cities and working to rebuild our crumbling highways, bridges, tunnels, airports, schools, and hospitals must be a top priority in the next few years? Well, sure, but let's be honest. All the money that's been earmarked for those things has been stolen by both Democrats and Republicans over the years. State and federal gas taxes are supposed to go for road repair. Is it? No, it's just thrown into the general fund and used for whatever politicians want to use it for. So let me know when those politicians are prosecuted for stealing earmarked funds. I'll believe that when I see it. Is President Trump right to pursue fair trade deals and renegotiate present trade policies as a means of boosting America's economy by protecting or creating jobs, increasing America's wages, and reducing our nation's trade deficit? Well, if he can, sure, why not? Because trade deals are meant to benefit us, and if they're not, then we have no business being a part of them. If he thinks he can get other countries to agree to better terms for America, hey, knock yourself out. And finally, national defense. This is always a fun section. Do you support rebuilding our nation's military by eliminating the defense sequester and expanding our military investment? No. Not a chance. We don't need the military we have, and we certainly don't need more. I am not now, nor have I ever been, nor will I ever be, in favor of America's majestic dick-waving circus, where we wander all over the planet telling other people what to do. That's not to say that if there's a legitimate national interest, we shouldn't act, diplomatically first and militarily a distant second, but the idea that we just get to bomb the crap out of anyone we don't like until they do what we want them to do, that's childish. Which of the following do you think will have the most impact on America's foreign policy in the next 5 years? Increased terrorism around the world, specifically increased Islamic terrorism. We can't be afraid to identify the problem. We can't be afraid as a planet to address the problem. And so long as we are, as we currently are, we're doomed. Should the U.S. do more to defeat ISIS and other terrorist groups in order to win the war on terror? Yes, but let's get one thing straight. There isn't a war on terror any more than there's been a war on any of the other silly things that America's declared war on over the years. It's just a marketing campaign. We're not serious. We're far too politically correct to even admit the problem. How are we going to fight a war? Should America take military action if necessary to keep Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons? Nope. I find the whole idea of the U.S. pretending that nobody else gets the toys that we enjoy to be absurdly hypocritical. If they can develop nukes, let them. Maybe it will give the Middle East a little more stability. It isn't like any of them can use them without committing suicide when every other nuclear power on the planet will turn Iran into a glass desert. This is just more silly dick-waving, and we do too much of that already. Do you support the United States sending ground troops to Iraq and Syria to destroy ISIS and other radical Islamic terrorist groups? Well, if that's your purpose, okay. But we all know it isn't. You're trying to force American values on other countries. You're trying to change regimes to something we like. That's your primary goal. It was in the last Iraq and Afghan war, and it will be if we go to Syria. So let's be honest here. Let me know when you're actually going to destroy ISIS and not change regimes. Do you agree with Republicans' commitment to continue to fully fund a missile defense shield for our nation to protect us from future missile threats? Well, maybe if we didn't act like such pricks, there wouldn't be future missile threats. If there's a legitimate need, sure. But let's make sure we didn't create the need by being assholes to other countries. You don't need a missile defense if you don't paint a big red target on your back. Do you believe our government is doing enough to protect the homeland from future terrorist attacks? No, not a chance. We won't secure our borders, and we have the left actively trying to import terrorists from overseas. This is a disaster. Of course, we won't even go fight the terrorists where they are now. Why do we think we care if they come here? Should the U.S. take a more muscular attitude toward Russia and China as they move to establish themselves as military and economic superpowers? Well, here's an idea. Why don't you actually talk to them instead of posturing? Why don't you try to work with them? We need a little less America fuck yeah and a little more cooperation. Stop being dicks. Do you agree that our federal government must go all out to combat cyber attacks on our nation's government, businesses, and infrastructure? Define all out. Do we have to be secure from cyber attacks? Yes, we do. Do we have to start launching military attacks against countries that we think might attack us? That's probably going a bit far. This isn't a question I can even answer because it's just not well defined. And of course, the GOP wants money. Yeah, no. I don't support the vast majority of what you do. Why would I want to donate to you? Come on back when you're actually becoming conservative. Come back when you can actually live within your means, when you're not chomping at the bit to attack other countries, and when you get rid of your hyper-nationalistic and ridiculously religious attitudes. Being proud to be an American is fine. Thinking we're the only ones who get to dictate how the rest of the planet operates is not. But that's the impression that I constantly get from the political right, and I find it absurd. We don't get to be the one sole superpower, and everyone has to listen to us. We're one country among many, and we all need to figure out how to live together. So, what do you think? I have no idea if the Democrats do something like this. I've looked, but I've never come up with anything in the past. The Republicans get these out at least every other year, and even though I am specially selected every time to respond, I don't feel like they care what I have to say because what I have to say falls outside of their echo chamber. And I wonder how many other people they ignore for the same reasons. So please post your comments below and let me know what you think of my answers. I always get a laugh out of how they phrase their questions because they assume that everyone automatically agrees with them. It's kind of absurd. That's why I feel I have to respond publicly just to point out the ridiculous stupidity. It is what I do after all.
Everything changes.